In the unblemished infancy of time, when the cosmos itself was a fresh melody sung into existence by the voice of the Almighty, and the earth, a nascent jewel hung suspended in the velvet dark, there was a place of unparalleled splendor, a divine masterpiece called Eden, a garden planted eastward by the Lord God, irrigated by a mighty river that, parting from Eden, branched into 4 life-giving streams: Pishon, Gihon, Tigris, and Euphrates, watering a land teeming with every tree that was pleasant to the sight and good for food. Into this sanctuary of perfect harmony, where the lion lay with the lamb and the air vibrated with the joyful symphony of creation, the Lord God, with tender artistry, formed man, Adam, not from celestial stardust, but from the very dust of the ground, the humble clay of the earth he had just made, and breathing into Adam's nostrils the nishmat shayim, the breath of lives, man became a living soul, imbued with spirit, intellect, and will, tasked with the noble stewardship of this verdant paradise, to cultivate it and to keep it, and to name every living creature that paraded before him in a display of God's boundless creativity. Yet even in this perfection, a divine observation was made. It is not good that the man should be alone. I will make him a helper, comparable to him. And so a profound sleep, a tardima, divinely induced, fell upon Adam. And as he lay lost in unconsciousness, the Creator, with surgical precision and profound love, took one of Adam's ribs, a part of his very essence, and from it he fashioned woman, Isha, for she was taken out of Ish, man. Eve, she would be called the mother of all living, a companion perfectly suited, bone of his bones and flesh of his flesh. And when Adam awoke and beheld her, there was recognition, completion, and joy. They stood together in Eden, Adam and Eve, clothed only in innocence, their forms radiant in the pure light of God's presence. And they were not ashamed, for shame had not yet found a crack through which to enter their world. Central to this garden, among the myriad of fruit-bearing trees, stood 2 of singular significance: the tree of life, its fruit promising perpetual existence, and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, a tree veiled in mystery and divine prohibition. For the Lord God had commanded the man, saying, "Of every tree of the garden you may freely eat, but of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil you shall not eat, for in the day that you eat of it you shall surely die." This was the sole restriction in a world of limitless abundance, a test of obedience, a fulcrum upon which destiny would pivot. Now the serpent, Nachash, more cunning, more subtle, more artfully persuasive than any beast of the field which the Lord God had made, perhaps shimmering with an otherworldly beauty that belied its dark intent, slithered into the scene of pristine innocence. It approached Eve not with overt aggression, but with a deceptive, silken inquiry, a whisper of doubt seeded into the fertile ground of her mind. Has God indeed said, "You shall not eat of every tree of the garden"? A seemingly innocuous question, yet laden with challenge to God's goodness and veracity. Eve, perhaps initially unperturbed, recounted the divine command, yet with a slight, almost imperceptible alteration, adding, "Nor shall you touch it, lest you die." Perhaps a small fence she or Adam had built around the law. The serpent, seizing upon this opening, pressed its advantage, directly contradicting the Almighty. "You will not surely die, for God knows that in the day you eat of it your eyes will be opened, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil." The allure was potent. Divine knowledge, godlike status, and awakening. And the fruit itself, the Bible does not name it, leaving humanity to ponder its form. Was it an apple, as tradition often depicts, or a fig, or a pomegranate? But let us consider for a moment the deceptive simplicity of a common fruit, one we might overlook in its ubiquity, yet which in that primordial context could have held an irresistible allure. Imagine a cluster of perfectly ripe bananas, their skins a vibrant, inviting yellow, their shape an elegant curve, promising easy access to the sweet, tender flesh within. a fruit so disarmingly simple, so readily available in many parts of our world today, yet in that moment, under the serpent's beguiling gaze, it might have seemed the epitome of desirability. Eve looked, and the serpent's words resonated with what her senses perceived. This banana, this particular fruit from the forbidden tree, was good for food, undeniably appealing. It was a delight to the eyes, its form and color captivating, and most powerfully, it was a tree desirable to make one wise to unlock the secrets God seemingly held back. The internal struggle, the weighing of desire against commandment, the pull of curiosity, the whisper of ambition, it all culminated in a single fateful act. She reached out her hand, perhaps her fingers tracing the smooth skin of the banana, and she took of its fruit, peeling back its natural wrapper to reveal the soft, pale flesh, and she ate. A bite, then another. The sweetness perhaps tinged with a dawning, unfamiliar sensation. And then, in a moment of shared destiny, she gave also to her husband, Adam, who was with her. Not distant, but present, perhaps a silent witness to the serpent's persuasion. Perhaps equally curious, perhaps simply yielding to his companion. And he ate. The taste, the texture, the act itself, unleashing a cascade of irreversible consequences. Instantly, as the serpent had foretold, their eyes were opened. But what they saw was not the glorious godlikeness they had been promised, but their own vulnerability, their nakedness. The innocence that had clothed them like a garment of light evaporated, replaced by a chilling self-awareness, a sense of exposure, and the first bitter taste of shame. Frantically, they gathered fig leaves, their broad surfaces hastily sewn together with thorns or pliant stems, to create crude coverings, a flimsy barrier against their newfound discomfort and the gaze of each other, and they instinctively knew, the gaze of God. Then, in the Ruach Hayom, the cool of the day, the gentle breeze that often signaled God's comforting presence, they heard the sound of the Lord God walking in the garden. But this time, the familiar sound brought not solace but terror. Their transgression had shattered the harmony, and they, Adam and his wife, hid themselves from the presence of the Lord God amongst the trees of the garden, cowering behind the very creation they were meant to steward. The divine call echoed, "Adam, where are you?" Not a question of location, for an omniscient God knew, but an invitation to confess, to confront the chasm that had just opened. Adam's reply, laced with fear and the first human excuse, "I heard your voice in the garden, and I was afraid because I was naked, and I hid myself." The blame game began. Adam pointed to Eve. "The woman whom you gave to be with me, she gave me of the tree, and I ate." Eve in turn pointed to the serpent. "The serpent deceived me, and I ate." But responsibility could not be so easily shed. The pronouncements of judgment followed, solemn and world-altering. To the serpent, a curse. "On your belly you shall go, and dust you shall eat all the days of your life. And I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your seed and her seed. He shall bruise your head, and you shall bruise his heel." A prophecy of a long struggle and an ultimate victory. To the woman, Eve, sorrow and pain. "I will greatly multiply your sorrow and your conception. In pain you shall bring forth children. Your desire shall be for your husband, and he shall rule over you." A distortion of the original partnership, now tinged with hierarchy and hardship. And to Adam, a life of toil. "Cursed is the ground for your sake. In toil you shall eat of it all the days of your life. Both thorns and thistles it shall bring forth for you, and you shall eat the herb of the field. In the sweat of your face you shall eat bread till you return to the ground. For out of it you were taken. For dust you are, and to dust you shall return." The very earth that had yielded its bounty freely would now resist him. Yet, even in judgment, there was a sliver of mercy. The Lord God made tunics of skin for Adam and his wife and clothed them, a covering more substantial than fig leaves, a covering that spoke of sacrifice, the first shedding of blood to cover sin, and then the final sorrowful decree. Man could not be allowed to remain in Eden, lest he reach out his hand and take also of the tree of life, and eat and live forever in his fallen, separated state. So the Lord God sent him out of the Garden of Eden to till the ground from which he was taken. He drove out the man, and he placed cherubim at the east of the Garden of Eden, and a flaming sword which turned every way to guard the way to the tree of life. The gates of paradise clanged shut, and Adam and Eve stepped out into a world now fraught with peril, hardship, and the shadow of death. Their hearts heavy with the memory of what was lost, and the bitter knowledge that a single act of disobedience, the choice to eat of that forbidden fruit, that deceptively simple, perhaps beautiful, alluring banana, had irrevocably altered the course of humanity, its echoes reverberating through every generation, a poignant reminder of innocence lost and the enduring consequences of a choice made in the pristine dawn of the world. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss an update.